Am I going? Hello, welcome to Change Now session 3. Amazing to see you all here. We have 1 hour and 15 minutes now with some extraordinary people, individuals, change makers, innovators who are going to talk to us and tell us what they're doing to align business with planetary boundaries. This is a new area of focus for Change Now. I'm your moderator. I'm James Bidwell. I'm CEO of Springwise. Springwise has been discovering and telling the stories of change makers for 20 years. We're a proud B Corp, a member of 1% for the Planet, an ecosystem partner for Change Now. And on our app, you will see detailed information about many of the solutions who are out here. It's extraordinary to be here. Santiago's welcome really kind of sent shivers through my spine. And I think it's just the most incredible gathering, and there's so many people here. It's very humbling, that's for sure. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker, Kate Raworth. She's going to talk to us for 16 minutes exactly. Afterwards, I'm going to have a fireside chat with the CEO of Arçelik, Hakan Bulgurlu, who has come in specially for literally this session. Amazing story. And then we have an extraordinary panel. We have Marie-Claire Daveu from Kering. We have Alexandra Palt from L'Oréal. And we have Chris Turner from B-Lab UK. So we're going to hear exactly what is happening out there on this topic. And then if that wasn't enough, to close, we have another fireside chat with Sandrine Dixson-Declève from the Club of Rome, who is extraordinary. So it's definitely worth waiting to the end. And if I'm still standing, that will be good. So Kate Raworth. Kate is a renegade economist focused on making economics fit for 21st century realities. Her best-selling book, Doughnut Economics, 7 Ways to Think Like a 21st Century Economist, has been translated into 20 languages. She is an activist thinker, a force of nature, and there is no one better than her to frame this session, aligning business with planetary boundaries. I give you Kate Raworth.
Hello, Change Now. Are we going to change now? Yes. Yes, because we need to change now. I am so delighted to be following John Sterman's very, very powerful call for transformation to end fossil fuels. And we must go further if we are to live within planetary boundaries. So, let's start. My clicker's not working, people. No. Sorry, this is not going the right way. OK, this is where I want to start. I offer you a compass for the 21st century. The goal, leave no one in the hole. Leave no one falling short on life's essentials. But, and this is a big but, do not overshoot the life support systems of our planetary home. We must meet the needs of all people within the means of this delicately balanced, unique living planet. And if that's the goal, it's not endless growth. It's thriving in balance. If that's the goal, well, we are so far from that goal right now. Billions of people worldwide fall short on life's essentials, and we are now overshooting not 4, but at least 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries. This is humanity's selfie. This is us. The people who find ourselves alive on watch at this moment in 2023, a quarter of the way through the 21st century. What are we going to do to turn this story around? There's no way that last century's economic thinking will get us there. We need new economic ideas. There's no way that last century's government policies will get us there. We need to transform policy. There's no way that last year's cities will get us there. We need to transform the design of the places we live. And there's no way that 20th century business models will get us there, because they were not designed for this. Their design has actually helped lead to this. We need to transform the deep design of business itself. How? I believe there are two powerful dynamics that we need to transform. The first, we know we've inherited degenerative industrial systems that take, make, use, and throw away. We need to create regenerative industries and lifestyles that reuse and refurbish and repair and restore the living world so that we work with and within the cycles of this planet. So from degenerative to regenerative. And there are companies that have begun their journey towards this. I'd say none of us, no one is there, but moving in this direction. Whether it's reconnecting the nitrogen cycle like Sanergy toilets in Kenya, or Interface carpets aiming to make their factories as generous as the wildland next door. Fairphone, creating modular technologies. Every mobile phone should be a modular technology so it can be opened and restored and repaired and fixed just that piece that needs fixing. Houdini clothing that is separating organic from synthetic fibers so that you create a circularity and create an ecosystem. So these, among many companies, are beginning to transform towards a regenerative design, and there's so much further to go. Add to this, we know we've inherited divisive economies. They are capturing value and opportunity in the hands of a few. We see the rise of a 1% in business, in nations, in the world. There is no way humanity will get into the donut in such an extraordinarily unequal world as we have now created. The richest 1% of people own half the world's wealth. And a lot of our company structures are responsible for driving that concentration of wealth. We need to create economies that are distributive by design, through businesses that are distributive because they intend to distribute value and opportunity. That's partly why they're in business. And there are companies that are on the way to doing this, whether it's through employee ownership, through paying beyond living wages, through paying a fair tax, contributing back to society, through channeling benefits into the local community, deep in their structure. This isn't charity on the edge of business. This is designed right into why they exist as a company in the first place. So there are companies in the world that are becoming regenerative, that are on the way to becoming distributive. Why are these still the exception? Why are most major companies not able to get there? There is a often unspoken contradiction at the heart of business. And it's that the vision of becoming regenerative and distributive is in contradiction with the deep design of the business itself. At Doughnut Economics Action Lab, we've been talking to companies for years, and off stage, over coffee, quietly behind the scenes, they will open up and tell you about this deep contradiction. You know, we talked to a tea company that said, we want to pay a living wage to our tea pluckers, but we can't. The market won't let us put that in our prices. They're going to have to deliver it through increasing their productivity because we're locked into a business model that requires us to deliver a certain return to our shareholders. So they will have to make it happen. We've talked to beauty companies that say, we know we should be refilling plastic bottles. We know we should be using reusable plastics. But the capex on that is just beyond what the market will bear, so we can't do it. I met a lead sustainability designer at a major clothing company. She said, I've been asked to design a range of regenerative clothing, but my bosses tell me I have to deliver 15% on this range from the get-go. That is impossible. People who want to bring about regenerative and distributive design in the heart of major companies that should be leading this are trapped because the business model of those companies does not make space for it. It's not their priority. Let me put it another way. If we've got divisive and degenerative economies and businesses over here and regenerative ones over here, most businesses, I'm going to come and stand right back here, most businesses are designed to be trapped here. The only transformation that they can actually bring about that's regenerative and distributive, that little slither of yellow. There's no way that that is going to transform and bring about the change we need. We need companies that are designed to actually exist in this space. We are designed to be regenerative. We are designed to be distributive. We're going to change now so that we can do it. So how can we begin to get there? Why is it that so many companies still ask, how much value can we extract in the way we run this enterprise? It was underneath the 20th century business model, and it still sits behind so many decisions. While other companies are already saying, how many benefits can we generate in the way we design this? What else can we do for the world, for the community, for Earth, for our customers, for our suppliers? How else can this business be part of transformation? And what lies between the two? 5 deep design traits that I'm going to offer you now. And I invite everybody here to think of these 5 deep design traits of a company that you work for, maybe a company you love, or a company you hate, or one that is your client that you're supporting or in your networks. Think of a particular company and ask yourself, not about the design of its products, the design of that company. How is it designed, and can it be part of the transformation the world needs? So, its purpose. What is the purpose of this company? Why does it even exist? What is it in service of in the world? Is it actually in service of being the biggest player in Europe, in service of itself? Or is it in service of bringing about the transformation the world needs? Sequestering carbon, creating health, distributing value so that people have good livelihoods. Think about its networks. What are its relationships with its customers, its employees, its suppliers, its industry allies, or does it still call them all competitors? And how does it live out its values through those relationships? Showing up here at ChangeNOW is about building new relationships, but which ones will you leave behind? Which alliances will you leave because they are pulling you back into the past and are not fit for the future we have to create? How is this company governed? Is it governed by quarterly reports and financial interests that want to see every quarter growing sales, growing market share, growing profits? We know what that governance does. Or is it governed by the values of all of those who it impacts, like the company Faith in Nature, which recently put nature on its board, one of 11 directors, represented by Lawyers for Nature, making nature's voice a formal legal part of how it's governed. What if it had not only nature's voice, but employees' voices, supply chain workers' voices, community voices, so that the governance represents all of those who are actually impacted by the company? What's stopping that? And when will it actually start? How is the company owned? Is it owned by shareholders, by venture capital, by private equity that may well be driving it for that short, fast return? Or is it owned in ways that actually unleash this possibility and lock in long-term that mission so that the purpose is pursued? Is it steward ownership that inspired Patagonia with its new model? Is it employee ownership? Is it owned as a cooperative? Many, many new business ownership design models we know are being created, and they are as important as the design of products. Because it's only when we create ownership that unleashes governance that regenerative and distributive design will actually become what a company is designed to do and be, rather than try to do and be pulled back. And that takes us to the last one, finance. And it sits at the bottom of this list because most things that are powerful sit hidden at the bottom. So finance, where that money is coming from and what it expects and demands and extracts. Is finance in service of the financiers who say, I want my highest, fastest returns, and if I'm not getting them every quarter, I'm out? That kind of finance is never going to drive this transformation. We need finance that's actually in service to the purpose, that recognizes that 20th century returns and what the financial community thinks are fair returns have been driven by fossil fuel returns, have been driven by a model that's destroying the living world. Finance, as my friend Hunter Lovin says, finance that is in service to life. Where is that finance? Is it in this room? Where is that finance that's actually in service to life? Because that is going to unlock the future. So let me finish by bringing together these design traits. Is the company that you work for, that you support as a client, that you are thinking of, is that company still asking, how are we pulled back by the design that we've inherited? Can we ever deeply transform? And how can we actually move forward? What in our design already enables us? I teach students of business, and I tell them, when you go for your job interviews, you young, smart, 21st century graduates, you are interviewing that company at least as much as they are interviewing you. And go to that company with these design traits in mind. Scan that company. Be a detective about its deep design. Don't get pulled in by the perks. Look at its deep design. Does this company deserve you? Does this company have the purpose and the networks that will actually enable you to do the work you've been educated and have the passion to do? Is it owned and governed and financed in ways that actually can unlock the regenerative and distributive future that you are committed to making happen? Or will you actually be locked inside a very 20th century business that doesn't have the capacity to be regenerative and distributive because it's designed in a way that's out of date? So this is a tough message. I'm bringing a tough message for businesses that have established themselves on a model of ownership and governance and finance that did very well, thank you very much, in the 20th century, because they are not yet designed or redesigned or transformed to be in service to the future we want to make. So let's not only focus on the design of our products, and there are some beautiful product designs here. We need to redesign business itself so that everybody within a company can bring their full selves to work and can actually unlock regenerative and distributive futures. And I see the seeds of that future in stakeholder-owned, steward-owned, employee-owned, cooperatively owned enterprises, and they are small at the moment. So how are big companies going to transform to meet that vision that they can bring about? Where is the finance? Where is the finance that is going to actually align and stop having finance versus life, but finance that is finally in service to life? If these ideas inspire you, at Doughnut Economics Action Lab, this is the way we work with companies. This is the conversation we want to have with business. We want to go deep to the roots of transformation. And my colleague, Erinch Sahan, is Doughnut Economics Action Lab's business and enterprise lead, and he's here today. And at 1 o'clock today, he's going to be running a workshop over in the Ecosystem Networks area. You are welcome to join his workshop, as he's done with many change makers, working with companies, or those who work with companies, because we are putting these tools in the commons so that they can spread and scale at the speed required. If you have the shared vision and the transformative ambition that we have to change the deep design of enterprise, we welcome you to use these tools with integrity so that we can transform business. So as the panel comes, as the conversations follow me, I invite you to listen with a scan, like a detective. What am I hearing of purpose, of networks, of governance? How is this company owned? How is it financed? How is it going to align that deep design with the design it needs to have if it truly is going to be regenerative and distributive and bring about the future that we need? Let's redesign business itself. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Amazing. Kate, thank you so much. Wow, I think we're set up, right? There's a lot of pressure on the next speakers to kind of, to answer to some of this. And as ever, Kate sets us up, frames it, solutions. It's just superb to start this debate that we're going to have now. So I'm really excited because I have someone who many of you may not have heard of, but one of the leading CEOs in Europe to have a fireside chat with me now. So I'm going to welcome Hakan Bulgurlu, the CEO of Arçelik. Hakan, I hope you're still there. Here he comes. Thank you and welcome, Hakan. It's really nice to see you here in Paris. And Hakan just came in and out for this session. And we were talking last week, and you were saying, you know, that it's so important to come here. But first of all, could you just tell us what Arçelik does? Tell us a bit about the company, because I have to admit I hadn't heard of it when we first spoke last week. But when now I have heard, it's amazing.
It is a bit of an odd name to remember, but I like to think of myself as a washing machine salesman. A lot of them, in one way. Some of our brands you might have heard, but I think the most significant thing about Arçelik is I could have taken Kate's presentation and put Arçelik on the top, and most of what she described we've already done in terms of transformation. We're a global business. Brands are Hitachi, Grundig, Beko. We manufacture everything that consumes electricity in the home, from a kettle to an oven to a fridge, also solar panels. And this is important for two reasons. One, the company originated in an emerging market. So our sustainability, global sustainability leadership is a good example for places where energy consumption is going to grow due to appliance penetration, like Pakistan, Bangladesh. We have double-digit market share in all of those places, India. That's one reason why Arçelik is important. And second, we have scale. We make tens of millions of appliances, and those appliances consume energy in homes, which actually cause emissions. And any efficiencies we are able to create, not just in the manufacturing process, but in what our appliances uses, directly impacts the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. So it's a very critical industry, and years ago, we chose sustainability as the center of our existence. It really, truly is our purpose. So if you were to ask an engineer in South Africa, or in Pakistan, or in China, or in Turkey, Romania, doesn't matter where you go, they will say they are singularly focused on decarbonizing the business. And they're proud to work for us.
Amazing. I mean, and I think many of us have one of your appliances, or multiple appliances in our houses. So you're touching many consumers. So going towards this topic of planetary boundaries and kind of beyond carbon a little bit, that we've been thinking about today in this session, you're very, very strong on carbon. And how are you thinking about some of the other areas in the donut, if you like?
I mean, the list is so long. We focus on decarbonizing because that has an immediate impact on everything else, right? So why are we frustrated, and why are we trying to push the boundaries on this? Because today, you heard from other speakers, you know, 1.5 degree world is really important for us to keep as a target. Changing that target changes everything. So there are a few CEOs like myself who are pushing to decarbonize fast enough to keep warming to 1.5 degrees. But when I became passionate about this topic in 2015, the chances of reaching a 1.5 degree year on average was 0 in the next 20, 30 years. Today, it's about 70%. In the next 5 years, one of the next 5 years, we will have reached 1.5. We're at 1.2 already. Now, 1.5 may not seem like much more, but on the extremes, it makes migration unimaginable. It makes water scarcity a huge issue. Biodiversity, the oceans, who have been a sink for carbon for so long, are now actually releasing heat. They're acidifying so fast. So basically, we are pushing against every planetary boundary that exists. We've lost 72% of species since the 1970s. That's my lifetime. I was born in 1972. I can't tell my kids I was not responsible for that. I run a company that has, 50,000 employees, 30 factories, consumes energy, consumes materials. We need to own up to that responsibility now and make sure that we're doing the right thing to stay within these planetary boundaries. And unfortunately, it is a burning platform.
It is a burning platform, and we've been hearing, we hear consistently, which is, can make us a bit depressed. But on the other hand, we can be optimistic when we hear visionary leaders, or enlightened leaders, as we call them, talking about this. And I think one of the drivers we were talking about is is how you invest and your ownership structure. Could you talk a little bit about that and that tension?
Yeah, sure. Kate alluded to it a little bit. Our capitalist system, I mean, I blame Milton Friedman and academicians for this, because our economic system, which is built on supply and demand, doesn't assign a value to biodiversity or nature. We treat nature or the world, everything in this room, my shirt, your jacket, the chair, the stage, everything is made from materials on Earth. We're not mining the moon yet. And yet it's a finite resource, but we don't treat it as a finite resource. The price of the destruction is not built into the goods and services. This is the fundamental problem we have. The second issue we have, publicly listed businesses, we're publicly listed, but we're majority owned by a family, which helps. But the US style of market-driven returns with short-term analyst reports every 3 months, it puts too much pressure on short-term gains. Whereas for a company's true value to be unleashed, it needs to have a very long-term view. And today, if you are not actually hedging a mandatory price in carbon, if you are not decarbonizing in your manufacturing operations, the cost of having to buy carbon credit in the future is going to put you out of business, because you won't be able to compete with businesses like ours, because we have invested in 105 megawatts of solar power, so we make our own solar power. We're not a utility. That's utility scale, by the way. I mean, we're appliance manufacturer, but we make sure we make our own power so we don't consume power from fossil fuels or even buy renewables, because that's sometimes questionable as well and not reliable. And that way we're hedging the need to buy carbon credits in the future, which will be mandatory. If we talk about a 2-degree warmer world, trust me, all the governments will wake up, there will be strict regulation, mobility will be difficult, and every company will be required to bake in the cost of the carbon they're emitting into their goods or services. So as a responsible business leader, you really have to hedge the future of your company. Companies that are not doing the right thing now and are thinking really short term will not be around in 10 years, I can comfortably tell you.
So, I mean, it's, again, just listening to what Hakan was saying, we make our own power. You create your own power and you're significantly investing. So this, if we were sitting with a private equity audience here, we'd be saying, well, the capex is too much, we can't do that. You've got to sell the business in 5 years or whatever. So how do you, and you mentioned when we were talking last week about investing ahead. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something critical in this whole debate is, the businesses of the future are investing now and spending more money to, I guess, they're going to make less profit now because they're investing ahead. How are you thinking about that? And you had a project you wanted to...
I want to make an important point here. Actually, you're correct in that most business leaders and platform leaders and private equity, they don't understand in most cases that a lot of this low-hanging fruit in terms of sustainability, whether it's using more recycled material, recycling your old appliances, cutting down energy consumption, actually adds to the bottom line in the short term with very little investment. Once you start realizing that, and the company really believes in the purpose, as a leader, you can't do anything on your own. It has to be the company, your shareholders have to be on board, like the Koch family is on board with a very long-term vision. But it's actually the employees' everyday focus on what can we do differently. Reducing the leak of a pneumatic screwdriver on a production line saves energy. If you multiply that by 5,000 pneumatic screwdrivers, the impact is real. These small gains everywhere actually are net positive to the P&L. In terms of investment, solar power, for example, everybody thinks putting solar power on their own roofs, strengthening their roofs is a cost factor. Well, guess what? It pays back in under 3 years.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. So, and again, I think what is beginning to come through is this understanding that if you invest from in sustainability or in this agenda,
you get the results.
You have a more profitable business, a more sustainable business, and one of the key areas, and you touched on it, is around employees and employee retention and recruitment. How do you see, what benefits do you see from this agenda in that context?
Yeah, today, Arçelik leads the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. We have done so for 4 years. We have reduced our carbon footprint dramatically in Scope 1 and 2. Scope 3, we've committed to cut by 50%. These are very meaningful things we don't really know how to do, actually. But what we are committing to do is invest in the technology and the know-how. to actually get to technologies which don't exist today to deliver those reductions. So employees, or we're now able to attract talent, especially young people, are so angry, they want to work for a company that's doing the right thing in terms of the goods and services they provide. But more importantly, a recent Nielsen study I saw, especially younger people, they are angry, and rightfully so, because we are the ones responsible, my generation, for what's happening, but they are the ones that are going to bear the consequences, and they are not at the table today. They are not making the decisions on the future. They are not regulating in governments. But they can do one thing, and they can vote with their money. And they are definitely choosing products and services that are more sustainable. Yesterday, I was at an industry award, and this activist, young activist, phenomenal speaker, saw our fiber catcher product, which actually is a washing machine installed with a very simple microfiber filter that catches more than 90% of the plastic microfibers going into the oceans from our clothes. Very significant. I mean, microfibers are everywhere. Microplastic is everywhere. This is super important, super simple. It just requires governments to regulate. We've open sourced the technology. We've told our competitors to use it as well. She said she's changing her washing machine immediately. And they are not price sensitive. So I'm trying to make the point that actually sustainability leadership and doing the right thing also is a good business strategy. It brings you stickiness with the customer, and increasingly we will see consumers willing to pay more for companies that are doing the right thing.
Which is amazing, and we see also at Springwise, in a smaller scale, but we get the best talent. They want to come and work for us.
Absolutely.
Because we're promoting this agenda, and and that must, as generational shift comes and as leaders become, the new leaders come through, that's got to be really positive and optimistic. We talked a bit about the regulation side of things, and there's a whole thing. Business needs to do it all. The regulators can't get there. How are you thinking about that? What do you think is going to happen in that? Do you think we're going to see regulation, and is it going to be in time?
I mean, I can talk for 20 days on this one, so I'm going to try and cut it to
6 minutes left, and
I'm going to
a couple more questions.
2 minutes. 2 minutes. This is very important. Okay, so the way we're going now, the only hope we really have is A, pricing carbon, which I think will happen, and make it mandatory, but B, regulation. I'll explain why. 4 product categories. Just this is a business that I'm close to. I speak to you about what I know really well. 4 product categories: lighting, heating and cooling, refrigerating, and electric motors. I'll repeat it because it's quite striking. Lighting, heating and cooling, refrigeration, and electric motors. These 4 product categories consume 40% of all power consumed worldwide. Today, technology exists today to cut their power consumption by 50%. All it would require would be regulation worldwide to use the most energy efficient product available in terms of technology. Yes, it requires some investment. Not much, far less than the trillions of dollars people talk about, or far less than creating hydrogen or mobile safe nuclear. This is a solution we have here today, which doesn't cost much. The cost increase on the products and services is also not much. It's palatable. And I think the wealthy countries can subsidize the poorer countries who are going to consume. If we were to enable regulation just for these 4 product categories, we would be able to shut down 2,100 coal-fired power plants around the world. That's equivalent to the entire North American emissions a year, 4,600 terajoules, I believe. So it's significant, it's meaningful, and regulation has to happen. To be able to impact that, I'm now also president of the European Appliance Association. Not all of my industry fellow leaders believe in what I'm saying or support what I'm saying, but they voted for me, so they understand that this is coming. And for the first time, I think we're in a space where I am for stricter regulation. Normally, a business leader reacts to regulation, says, oh, it's going to cost money, it's going to stifle innovation, it's bad for the consumer. The arguments are very long. I am arguing for stronger regulation, for more energy efficiency. I think that makes a big difference. And then carbon pricing, as I mentioned, has to happen also.
So, I mean, that's, very, very refreshing. A CEO arguing for more regulation, seeing the opportunities and the innovations already there. And your leadership, I think, in that group particularly is, it's going to be transformative. And I think we heard a lot about burning platforms already today, and this is looking like we've got people who are leading the charge with huge influence and huge scale. I want to ask you about something else. You wrote a book, and I want to just share, what it was about and why you did it, and I guess it's a metaphor for a lot of other things in your life.
2015 or so, when I was always interested in the climate and followed closely, but I never really understood how I was impacting it and what my role would be. And then once I started understanding, I joined the World Bank Commission for Carbon Pricing, and I started seeing data. I was horrified at what's happening, and I could not believe that this is not what everybody's prioritizing. But I couldn't really get everybody's attention. I mean, I'm looking at the audience now. Nobody's yawning, nobody's looking at their phone, so it's working, right? But back then, it was very difficult, very abstract. You're talking about 2030, you're talking about something that may happen. Most business leaders are in their 50s, right? So they think the problem is their children's problem or the next generation's problem. And it was very hard to get through. But then I had an idea, thought, climbing Everest, everybody thinks of Everest. Maybe make a big story out of preparing for it and draw attention to the melting glaciers. And I went on that journey. It was a long preparation, very focused. I made it up. It was a very unfortunate year to do it because many climbers died the morning. It was the worst day in the mountain's history. But I made it back alive. And I was transformed deeply into a new person. And I had a renewed purpose, which was basically to drive innovation, drive technological change and behavioral change in the platform that I manage. And the platform I manage has impact, right? It's huge. We make tens of millions of appliances. So us changing voluntarily really does make a big difference. I mean, I love Patagonia. I mentioned this, that Kate mentioned, but it's tiny, right? You need scale. You need the big companies to transform fast. And they need to focus on what they impact most, whether it's materials, whether it's regenerative materials, or decarbonizing. And I've kind of made it my own personal mission. And it was all triggered in a visit to Thailand with my children to a favorite bay of mine, Maya Bay. And I prepped my children about a Pirate's Cove treasure. We swam ashore, rented a boat, and I was knee-deep in plastic. Knee-deep, unbelievable. And that happened in the last 10, 15 years. Just unbelievable, undescribable. And my daughter looked up at me and said, why? And at that moment, I could not answer her. I really could not answer her. Why? Because there is no answer. There is no excuse. And I'm part of the problem. I mean, the amount of plastic we use is insane in our products. So I decided then, at that moment, that in 20 years, when my children are adults, I will tell them that I did everything in my power while I was leading the platform to transform the business I was managing for good, and to try and clean up the mess that we were making.
Amazing.
And I wrote a book about it.
And it's called, it's.
Thank you.
Look, it's amazing, and it's called A Mountain to Climb, I think.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning the name.
Gave me a copy, which is great. I'm going to read it. But look, we talked also about the human factor earlier, and this is the human factor at a really, really senior level, helping, supporting, and driving the change. So we have now 13 seconds. One thing that you would like to tell your audience that they may do when they leave now to sort of instill a bit of urgency?
Yeah, I'm asked this question a lot, right? And the sense of urgency, I feel it every day. I guess the most meaningful thing I can leave you with is, as individuals, we really make thousands of decisions a day, even with your thought process. I'm not just talking about the purchases you make. I'm really how you live your life is thousands of choices. Each choice you make, each decision you make, if you think of the impact you have, that is where change will really begin and become meaningful. So it's what you consume, how you drive, how you travel. The list is so long. Do you turn the water off when you're brushing your teeth? I don't know. There's so many simple things, right? I'll tell you, we just came up with and I'm not trying to sell you this by any meaning, but it's a very simple solution. Washing machines, wash your clothes, dryers, take the humidity out, and then dump the water. I don't know why anybody didn't think of this, but we have a new product now. They're stacked, so when the dryer takes the water out of the clothes, it puts it back in the washing machine to use in the next cycle. That saves 5-6 liters of water. If you think 100 wash cycles or 200 wash cycles, the impact is immense in terms of water consumption. There are simple things that we can all do that collectively have a big impact.
Amazing. Please join me in thanking Hakan.
Thank
Have
you.
a good trip back. See you
Thank
soon.
you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Well done. Wow. That was just fantastic. So, and I see the nodding and the kind of agreement. So we have now a fantastic panel. We have two of the big French brands. We have three fantastic panelists. We have Marie-Claire Daveu from Kering, Alexandra Palt from L'Oréal, and Chris Turner from B-Lab UK. Please join me on stage.
It's still on.
And a big round of applause. Marie-Claire. Voila. You sit here, Chris. You sit here. There we go. So welcome and thank you so much for joining. Great to have you here. Great to have you at ChangeNOW. Very interesting setup from Kate and from Hakan. So I think we've got plenty to think about. What I'm going to do is just ask each of my panelists to introduce themselves and tell us why they're here. They're going to do a much better job than me reading a bio out. So Marie-Claire, would you... pardon, I thought you were Mike. Let's check.
It's fine.
C'est parfait. OK. So, please.
So, Marie-Claire Daveu, I am in charge of sustainability institutional affairs inside Kering Group. So, Kering, it's a luxury company. We have brands, to name a few, like Gucci, Bottega Veneta, Balenciaga, Pomellato, and Boucheron.
Super. Thank you. And you're here as a partner of ChangeNOW.
Yes, exactly. We start to be a partner from the beginning of the story of ChangeNOW. We have the feeling that if we want to change a paradigm on the environmental side, but also on social side, we need really to work in a collaborative approach where innovation is really key. So that's why we decided to join. Today we have also some startups, and perhaps we will have the time to come back about them, which are here for this exhibition. And we think that it's really important to exchange also between companies. And so that's why I'm very happy to be with my friend Alexandra on stage.
Fantastic. Well, that's a great segue to Alexandra. Please introduce yourselves.
Yes, hello. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having us. So my name is Alexandra Palt. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer and the CEO of the L'Oréal Foundation. So we call all this together the corporate responsibility. L'Oréal is the leader in the beauty industry with 35 international brands. Having committed to a transformation in 2013 that is of course ongoing, and I hope I will be shared to share some of our progress and some of the difficulties and some of the challenges in the next 20 minutes.
Fabulous, thank you. And Chris, a fellow Brit, over to you for a quick intro, please.
Thank you, and it's great to be here with the two of you as well. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chris Turner. I am the Executive Director of B-Lab UK, which is the charity in the UK that's behind the B Corporation movement. Can I do a quick show of hands who knows what a B Corp is? That makes my job much easier. Excellent.
Who is a B Corp?
Yeah, how many B Corps? Excellent.
Still need to work.
Yeah, a bit of work to do. So we obviously have partners here. There's a B-Lab stand here. Our B-Lab Europe colleagues are there, and there's workshops and things going on led by them. And I also run a campaign called the Better Business Act, which is a big campaign in the UK to try and change corporate governance so that there are mandatory requirements to reflect those that B Corps have adopted voluntarily. So I can speak a bit more about that as well.
Brilliant, thank you. Thanks very much for the introductions. Much better than I would have done. So, Marie-Claire, thinking about some of the initiatives that you at Kering across your amazing scope of brands, and you have huge influence globally. What are you doing around, so you're doing a lot around carbon we talked about, but the other kind of planetary boundary the sort of biodiversity and some of the other areas, social. Just can you bring it to life a little bit with some of the initiatives that you're undertaking? Because I sometimes think we look at brands and we kind of don't know the stories behind them and all the work. And certainly when we were talking earlier, there's just so much happening. Could you bring that to life for the audience a little bit, please?
So I don't want to keep the 20 minutes only for me. So I will go in a nutshell about the past and above all about the future, which is most important for me. About the past, we have a very pragmatic approach when we are speaking about planetary boundaries, not only linked with water, with climate change or biodiversity, because now nearly 10 years ago, we created, and I think many people now know this tool, what we call the environmental profit and loss account, which is a tool to measure our environmental footprint, not only in our own boundaries, but also in our entire supply chain, and now until the end of life of the products. And only to give you the order of magnitude for our business, over 90% of our environmental footprint is linked with our supply chain. It means outside our legal boundaries. Based on this, I will say milestone, we were able to dedicate specific program on raw materials. So in link also, and you mentioned it, biodiversity with regenerative agriculture. So we created now 2 years ago a fund where we are transforming 1 million hectares from conventional agriculture to regenerative agriculture. When we are speaking about greenhouse gas emission for our Scope 1 and Scope 2, between 2015 and 2022, we were able to reduce by 71% our greenhouse gas emission. Scope 3 in intensity by 52%. We have 100% renewable energy inside our legal boundaries. So I can mention many things, but I would like also to take this opportunity to tell you that it's still a lot of work to do. And I think a big change we decided this year is to make an announcement in link with climate change and to respect the planet boundaries, that now to speak about intensity, it's not enough. That's why we decided to reduce in absolute value by 40% our greenhouse gas emission by 2035. So for me, it's a big shift, because you have to really tackle your business model. It's about fair production, it's about innovation, and it's about new business model. And I hope also inside ChangeNOW to be able to find new solutions, new innovation that will support us really to transform in a reality this very ambitious target, because we are a company and we want also to continue to grow.
Thank you. I mean, amazing, and there's a lot in all of that. But thank you so much. And I'm going to move to Alexandra. Tell us, you have it's a slightly different business. You're in the beauty space. Again, when I was looking into it and talking, you're just doing so much, and I don't know how much of that comes through in as a customer. But tell us a little bit about some of the work you're doing. Please.
Yeah, so what I would like to suggest is I'm not going to talk about all the things we are doing, because, that is also a fight sometimes, of course, internally, because people say, can't we concentrate on something? But no, we cannot concentrate on something because the environmental challenges and social challenges are so vast and so enormous that we have to do a lot of different things in order to respond to the challenges. So I see in the room 10 people of my team. So so they can all at lunch, please try, can you stand up, or L'Oreal, or just raise your hands?
Right.
Yeah, you see, so they can really, if you have a specific question on climate, on biodiversity, on resource utilization, on living wage, I think, and we have we have formalized our vision already in 2020 in a document that is called L'Oreal for the Future, where there are all our targets defined with scientists on how will we be able to operate in 2030 within the planetary boundaries. What I would like to share with you is how does that happen on a daily level, on one issue, and how complicated it is and how much challenges are there from all. And so as we have heard before, that refill and recharge is a challenge, I would like to take this example. So when we look at our packaging, you imagine when you put beauty products on the market, packaging is extremely important. It is the first contact with the consumer. It is about the safety and the appearance of the product. Consumers buy beauty products because of what the packaging is looking like. And when you ask them, for example, we have a target of reducing packaging intensity, becomes much lighter. Very often they say, it looks that I get less for my money. So there are a lot of challenges around packaging. So there are different solutions. For us, the solutions is so all our recycled, plastic will be recycled in 2030. It is already, we will be at 50% in 2005, and we accepted the roadmap. But it is more than that. We have to change consumer habits. And there are many steps. So what is difficult? First of all, of course, it is you have to create an economic equation that works for refill. You cannot bring products on the market that does not allow the company to continue to make business. So we have to be innovative. We have to disrupt. So you have to train your people so that they think different about what you can bring to the market. Then you have to market it. And that is also something, I think, where we can still do better, because it's not sufficient to put it out there. People really need to be encouraged and incentivized. So we have done a lot of tests. I give you some interesting information because it sounds also easy. So let's do refill, recharge, and then the question is solved. But unfortunately, it's not, because when you do refill and recharge, you put it on the market. If it's not 25% less expensive, people don't buy it. It has not to be the same price. It has to be 25% less expensive. And then, even then, you have to make a huge, huge effort in order to promote it, to encourage people to adopt new consumer behaviors. So what I want to say by this example is, so first, of course, we have a responsibility to do it. We have a responsibility to be innovative, disruptive, find new solutions, market them. And then we have as society a responsibility to also change our behaviors as consumers. And how often do we do that every day when we buy something, asking ourselves, have we looked at the environmental footprint of this product, of how the company behaves? Are we thinking that we are so small that our personal contribution is not going to make a difference? I think everybody has already thought that. I have thought that, that our contribution. But we have to understand that it has to be a societal, a collective transformation where everybody has a role to play. So I think what we need now at this time of history is that companies, individuals, politicians, governments, regulators, civil society, we come together and understand that we are in the same boat and that all those who want to progress have to do it together. So it's not anymore about the bad companies. It is, this is about together.
Brilliant, thank you so much. That's amazing. And a very good setup for Chris to maybe respond to some of this, because B Lab and B Corp was, of course, set up to drive this new agenda, drive a new way of incorporating companies, and look, we've heard amazing examples of things that are happening at scale, but also difficulties with consumers kind of making that change. Talk a bit about, reflect on that a bit, Chris, and see, tell us a bit about what the B Lab movement is doing.
Sure. Yeah, really, really, really interesting stuff. And I suppose that, what do I think? You all know, well, some of you didn't put your hand up. Most of you know what a B Corp is. And I think that therefore, most of you will probably know that the B Corp movement has accelerated dramatically over the last few years. So there's 6,000 B Corps around the world now. In the UK, there's nearly 1,500 B Corps. And I think there's obviously lots of reasons for that. Part of the reason for that is the incredible B Corps we already have and the work they do in spreading the word and inspiring others to join them. But I think at the very core of the growth of the B Corp movement is a sort of secret recipe, which is, in effect, it in reality, it is the combination of our assessment. So it's a lot of hard work to do that assessment, to make improvements necessary to reach a minimum bar, to be verified. And it's a combination of that with what we require in terms of what we call a mission lock. So a legal change in the UK, you amend your articles of association. In the US, you have to become a benefit corporation. But a kind of enshrining the principles, essentially, of being governed in the interests of a wider set of stakeholders within the governance of the business. And I think it's a combination of those two things which is the real kind of magic and the real secret recipe at the heart of B Corp and our success. Because what you're doing there is you're combining the how and the why. And the B Corp assessment and all of that hard work is a how. It's a how you do better, how you have more positive impact. But the governance piece there is the why, because you're enshrining it in your business. And what we've just heard is a lot of the how, a lot of the ways that your businesses are doing things in a better way. And I think that for me, if you have the why, and if anybody who works for a B Lab has to sort of do earmuffs now, if you've got the why in place, I don't really care about whether you do the how by being a B Corp, as long as you do it. And being a B Corp is a brilliant way of doing it. It's an incredibly powerful way of doing it, and it's a way that clearly 6,000 businesses have found really, really valuable. Now, the additional benefit of doing it through something like B Corp and getting a certification is you then get the sort of feedback loop, back into the why, because it's something that customers, consumers, citizens recognize. And so you're performing a role in sort of educating people there as well, which essentially plays into the incentives. And I was thinking about Kate's presentation earlier on as she was talking about these sort of elements of business design, thinking about the governance, thinking about the ownership, thinking about other stakeholders, and how a business interacts with those. And essentially, for me, they all really sort of play into that why question. It is ultimately, at the end of the day, the simple fact that a business is just a collection of people. And those people, every single day, have to make decisions. And when we talk about corporate governance, and I might get a chance to talk about our campaign later on, we talk about those people in the boardroom, the people at the very top of a company, and how they make decisions and who they bring into the conversation when they're making decisions. But actually, that decision-making runs throughout an entire business. And I think that the work that Kate's doing and the framework she's describing are incredibly powerful in terms of aligning a whole load of whys throughout the ownership, throughout the governance, and throughout the other sort of incentives that play on people as they're making decisions.
I'm going to have to stop you.
You stop me.
I'm just watching the clock.
I'd wrap
so
on
it's brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the other thing that just is the power of the brand. So I think, and that's becoming more and more prevalent from a B Corp point of view, the B Corp brand, but in helping consumers change. But I want to move to innovation because it was something we talked about, and the role of the role of innovation for this agenda, Marie-Claire, we were thinking about that, and I know you've got a few things going on, and you've got a lot of people who work in your company. How does it run through the whole company? How do you set it up? How do you think about it against this planetary boundaries agenda?
Because we have only a few minutes, if we speak about innovation, because it's really key when we are at ChangeNOW. For us, we try really to push innovation at every stage of the company, because Alexandra, you mentioned disruption. It's really also to have disruptive innovation that can support you to change your business model. So, for example, today we have here a few startups. One, I like it because it's already very operational. It's about how you can use new raw materials like the mycelium. So it's something made by mushroom. And we were able to work with this startup called Mogu with the product FEA. And last October, we put in our boutique a Balenciaga coat made from mushrooms. So you can you can go to see it. I think it's very interesting. We are also working the link between digital and innovation. For the traceability of the raw material, it's really key. So we try really to work hand in hand when we are speaking about innovation and sustainability. And our dream, for example, is how we will be able to make some laser in lab, because in your business, laser is really key. You have a big environmental footprint on the environmental side through biodiversity, water, land use, and everything. So if we are able to do that, that's why we are working also with startups like Vitrolabs.
Amazing, and it's great, to see that coming to life at ChangeNOW, with your support and your engagement in that, which possibly 2 or 3 years ago wouldn't have been happening. Alexandra,
it was crazy, a few years ago when we are speaking that we will replace with mycelium.
And put it in a,
Well, people were thinking that we are a little bit crazy inside
I'm not
Kering.
asking you how much that coat cost either, but it's probably not, it's probably reasonably expensive, but very good value. Alexandra, a little bit about L'Oréal and how you're innovating behind the scenes, and
so I always like to have a real discussion, so I'll always try to take another angle on it. So I think, yes, innovation is extremely important, but disruptive innovation is not happening every 3 months. Disruptive innovation is called disruptive because it's really huge. So if we want to manage if we would like to face the challenge of the environmental crisis, we would need disruptive innovation every day if we are just relying on innovation. So innovation is extremely important, but we have to stop telling ourselves that this is going to be the solution. It is going to be many things. It is a real transformation of models, of the way we think of everybody, because there is not, even if all companies do what Kering and L'Oréal and other big corporations do, we still wouldn't have managed the problem. There is much, much more work to do. So innovation is one of the solutions, but we cannot go home and think, okay, there is so much innovation ongoing, we are going to manage this, That is a legend. And I'm very afraid of this legend. It is like the same one that everybody has its 1.5-degree plan, companies, big countries, every country has this theoretical targets and nobody is doing it. So in what does that is supposed to make me feel better? Because paper is patient, we say in Austria. I'm Austrian. So when paper is patient, you can write a lot of things. So we need people who do. And doing is not just disruptive innovation. There are a lot more things necessary. And I think what I really liked in the first, and then I'll stop because now I'm taking too much time. I'll stop here. Living wage.
Quickly.
So this is really something that was said in the beginning. Living wage is so important because for us it seems obvious that we can sacrifice a little bit of our comfort, or I hope more of our comfort, for future generation. But if you tell that to Indian, African, South Asian people who are entering development, how do you explain that they have to sacrifice their child now for the future generations? That is not going to happen because they see their child. So we have to be able to create an economic system where living wage, where people can live from what they earn. And I think it's profoundly indecent when companies say that this is not possible. So we have not just made living wage an obligation for L'Oréal, but also in 2030, all our strategic suppliers have to pay living wage in our supply chain, because we do not want to be associated to economic activities where people work for us indirectly, but do not earn enough to survive.
Yep. I mean, such an important point. So I'm glad I let you carry on talking. Look, we've really got not much time left, and I need to keep the time. So, Chris, I mean, do you give me 30 seconds on the Better Business Act quickly, because I know you wanted to just talk about how you're thinking about that very quickly, if you don't mind.
Thanks, James. Yeah, I mean, 29 seconds is ambitious, but I'll try. So and I'll link it to this innovation question as well. I don't know whether this translates, this expression. Necessity is the mother of invention. And I think that ultimately, I'll go back to what I was saying earlier. The people who are making decisions in business, have to have ultimately the crisis in that conversation every time they're making a decision. And so that's what B Corps do. That's the commitment they've made when they become a B Corp. So the Better Business Act is a campaign we're running in the UK to try and change the core duties of directors. So it's Section 172 of the Companies Act. You'll all look it up and read it, I'm sure. But it essentially will say that as a director of business in the UK, what you need to do is you need to align the interests of your shareholders with wider society and the environment. And that is the minimum expectation that we have of directors in business. And what that does, brings those stakeholders into the conversation. It brings the necessity into the conversation. So you can't make a decision without considering that necessity. And that will, of course, drive innovation.
So that's good. Thank you. And I'm a signatory to that. Look, we've run out of time, and I'm disappointed that we've run out of time because these guys are so amazing, and it was such a fantastic debate. But thank you so much. And Alexandra, thank you for diverting the questions a little bit to get us on topic. And Marie-Claire, I mean, amazing what you're doing. I'm so impressed. These guys are amazing. They're here with us, sharing these stories. Thank you, and thank you, Chris. Don't go, because we have a very amazing lady who's joining me now. Just another quick round of applause for these guys. So next up is Sandrine Dixson-Declève, and I promise you won't be disappointed. Sandrine. Yeah, come on. Big round of applause. You sit there, I'll sit here. Wow, thank you so much for coming.
You're very welcome.
Don't
leave,
don't leave. Come on. I said at the beginning that this is
I'm going to shake you up, I promise.
Very important. So, okay, so welcome to Change Now.
Thank you.
Have you been on any other stages so far today, or is this your first?
I've only just
thing?
arrived. Yeah.
So look, Club of...
I've heard everything.
You've heard everything, brilliant.
Yes.
So we've set it up nicely, I think.
Yes.
For maybe a little bit more of a radical conversation now, I hope. And
there are lots of elephants in the room.
There are many elephants. What I'd love to ask you just to quickly explain the Club of Rome, and quickly explain how you got there, because your journey there is very powerful when you told it to me. But so that everyone knows where we are and what your background is and what you're doing.
Sure. So I am the first female co-president of the Club of Rome, an organization which I don't know if all of you know, but we're the first to publish the limits to growth in 1972. It's an organization that was, thank you, and we have some of our incredible members here, including Kate Raworth and Hunter Lovins, who was actually mentioned as well. Why is that important? And that's the big elephant that's still in the room, because we actually haven't talked about the fundamental link to growth. The limits to growth was about the fact that with exponential population growth, with the incredible impact that people were having on natural resources, we needed to put together an understanding of when we would start to see key tipping points. And this was done by some MIT researchers, led by an incredible woman and a couple, actually, so Dana Meadows and Dennis Meadows and their researchers, looking at how that juxtaposition of continued population growth with the demand on resources would start to hit a wall, literally. I think what's most important from that report is millions of copies were sold. Millions of people's lives were changed. During our 50th anniversary, we spoke to so many people who told us it is because of the limits to growth that I actually started to question my relationship with the economy. It has guided me through my career, etc. But not enough governments were ready to listen to the fact that we needed to shift our patterns of growth and start to address new indicators and not be so fixated on productivity and GDP. And here we are now with some major tipping points, a poly crisis which is upon us. And as we've already heard, we're at 1.2 degrees. We will only continue to warm the planet, and that will continue to have a series of climate impacts which are going to have direct impacts on all of us. And I think one of the most important quotes, by the way, coming from the former chair of the Trade Union Confederation at the international level, Sharon Burrows, and I would like to say this to all industrialists, to all trade unionists, there are no jobs on a dead planet. There's no industry on a dead planet. None of us will be able to survive. The planet will be fine without us.
Yeah.
But we will become either, unfortunately, extinct or refugees. All of us. I mean, think about that. The potential survival of all of us is really at stake. Now, that seems like a doomsday scenario, and that is the big elephant in the room. And let's talk about, hopefully, together, some of the possible solutions, because there are some, and it goes far beyond the technology or the individual industries that we've learned of today, unfortunately. It has to be much more collective.
So you set me up beautifully for my next question or thought. You know, it's around, I mean, I think what we're hearing about a lot, particularly in a kind of corporate scenario more broadly than what we've been hearing about today, but it feels a bit more like it's going to be iterative, and we can sort of do the same thing, but we can change, and you know we're going to be fine. But
we need to build the plane while we fly.
I think I think what you're advocating is a bit more of a reset, and like a total reset. And how do you see the solutions, and is that possible? Is it, you know, can we get everyone together and change, or?
So Jane Goodall says we're the most intelligent species, but we're definitely not the wisest. And I think that is so true, because we have not optimized our intelligence or our innovative capacity. And innovation is not just about industrial innovation or technological innovation. Innovation is about the human spirit. It's about how we can actually govern ourselves, put in place the right economic models that go back to what is most essential. I mean, last week we were at the Beyond Growth conference, many of us, gathering the most incredible economists from across the globe, talking about what are the different models, including Kate's Doughnut and other models. And we all came to the simple conclusion, as does our book, by the way, that is now building on the limits to growth recently, that we can create a well-being society, that we can have a universal basic dividend, that we can grow differently. What I'm really fascinated by is that governments continue to say, including this government, by the way, because we've talked about the need from Hakan of having regulation. Macron is saying, stop the regulation. So if we're going to change now, write a letter to Macron, by the way, because that is the #1 action that we could do today.
Okay.
Is to tell him good regulation makes sense. We need to regulate for the right things. That means putting in place taxation schemes that tax the rich, redistributing the wealth, putting in place universal basic dividend. The way in which we can actually put forward the solutions, and most importantly, take out the perversities in the market. Why do we continue to subsidize industrial agriculture? And again, by the way, reality check today, the European People's Party across Europe, and Macron is supporting this, are protesting against all of our new laws from the European Green Deal, the farm to fork law, saying that farmers are going to get hit. Most of the farmers are already shifting towards regenerative practices, and we know that. Most farmers are seeing that soil degradation, especially in Italy and Spain, if they're not getting flooded out, they're getting dried out, and they can no longer actually farm. The only reason why the EPP is complaining about the nature law is because it actually starts to put requirements on pesticides and industrial farming techniques. That is not helping the little man, or the little woman, or the farmer. That is actually going straight into the pockets of industrial agriculture.
So yeah. I told you it was going to be good. So, so I'm just going to try and play that back to you. So would I be right to think that big industrial companies who are making a fortune out of pesticides are effectively putting pressure on politicians not to put the regulation in that we need?
Absolutely.
That's cynical.
And that is happening right now.
Okay.
That's why I think, really, I mean, we are at Change Now. Change Now means open up our eyes and smell the roses. Understand that we are all here collectively speaking to the converted. But the fact of the matter is that outside, in the corridors of power, we're getting a huge backlash. And I'm very worried.
We knew last week at the Beyond Growth conference that certain politicians couldn't actually speak truth to power and that they were being told that they would get in trouble if they did, even if it was a multi-party conference. We know that most of our leaders, unfortunately, are starting to get nervous. They're using the fear-mongering and they're using the fact that this is going to be bad for the citizen as an excuse to protect business. We have the capacity to work with business. There are brave business leaders that are ready to be ambitious. We have many plans at the European level, and we've already actually, with the European Commission, put forward these plans through the Green Deal, through Fit for 55, and actually through other proposals, including what we call Industry 5.0.
So there is hope and there is optimism, but we've got to really, really push, and it's very, very urgent, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, my background shows that there's, luckily, hope and optimism. I have worked to build bridges between the private sector and policymakers, but I am starting to get impatient. Yeah. I'm starting to get impatient because, many things have been said today, and I've been actually drawing all kinds of circles. There is the human factor. We're all human beings, and we need to remind ourselves that the human factor exists in all corporations. But the problem is that we need to steer those corporations in a completely different way. So here are a few facts. 98% of our economy at the European level is driven by SMEs. Yep. Who do you think drives the legislation? It is sure not the SMEs. We're not protecting SMEs. Number two, we don't have a proper wealth tax. If you have Warren Buffett telling you that his housekeeper is paying more tax than he is, there is a problem. Norway has just put in place a wealth tax, and the wealthiest Norwegians have left the country. We have to hold our governments accountable. Wealth distribution is not a communistic plot. It is the way in which we maintain stability and security in our economy at a time when actually we see windfall profits of the largest oil and gas sectors on top of the back of energy poverty, mobility poverty, and inflationary effects. This is the first generation that's going to make less than its parents. It is the first generation that has the highest level of mental illness and suicide rates. It's not about we are protecting the planet for the next generation. It's we are creating a better world. Yeah. Our systems are broken, kaput. Let's start to rebuild them into something that goes back to what is most essential. I mean, even Bob Kennedy, I'm sorry, I'm on a rampage now.
Good.
Bob Kennedy said to us in 1968 in his famous speech where he was going to actually announce his election campaign to be president, we do not measure that which is most essential. We have been through the largest pandemic that we have ever seen in our generation. What did it teach us? That we wanted to protect our loved ones. Apart from those that wanted to go on a rampage and get toilet paper and order things online, most of us wanted to make sure that we were all safe. Most of us wanted to actually respect the rules for the collective good. There was solidarity. There were so many beautiful, innovative processes that were developed to enable us to function during this time of real fear for our lives. Can we please tap into that subconsciousness and remind our policymakers that transformation is absolutely feasible, that we can innovate for the better good of people, planet, and prosperity, not for power, profit, and patriarchy?
So, I mean, amazing. And just in terms of how because we've only got like a few minutes left in this, what do we do, us? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's lots of people who are not doing very much, but what, because it's a bit like, oh my God, this is huge. And we support you, first thing. But what do we do when we leave this and this event, and how do we kind of help push that change? Do you have any kind of anything you want to sort of share and get us to do, apart from write to Macron?
So Well, we need to write to Macron. We need to write to a lot of others.
Yeah.
But I mean, part of that is this book, Earth for All: A Survival Guide for Humanity. It's what allows, I'm hoping, many of us to understand that there is a feasible Earth for All. We talk about 5 key turnarounds that we need to really address: poverty, inequality, empowerment, food, and energy. And we give solutions for all of those 5 turnarounds. And the important thing is that we need to embody that narrative, all of us. Don't just support me. Go out and start to talk about the narrative that there is an Earth for all. And here's what it looks like: universal basic dividend. The fact that actually 75% of G20 citizens want a well-being economy. The fact that actually wealth distribution is no longer functioning or even enabling well-being. Our well-being index shows that well-being is decreasing as countries are getting wealthier on the backs of the poorest of the society. So all of these narratives have to be integrated in our conversations. But in addition to that, yes, clearly, we need to consume less. And we saw from the En-ROADS data, which, by the way, I've used before with policymakers and industry. I used to work with the oil and gas sector. I mean, I was an advisor for the oil and gas sector to make them greener. But still, the fact of the matter is that in using En-ROADS, the greatest fallacy that we are all being sold right now is that technology is going to solve us and all we need to do is invest in renewables. That is utter bullshit. And I really want to call it out, because if we continue to burn fossil energy at the rate that we are burning it, it doesn't matter how much we invest in renewables. We will not reduce our impact. That is hard. So what do we need? Yes, we need to shift to other types of energy sources, and we need to do it now. And luckily now it's at price parity and we can do it. Secondly, we need to offer mobility for people to get from A to B, so that actually trains become sexy again, so that actually they're fast and furious and they make us happy to get into a train and go to a train station where you actually want to be aggressed, but it's a wonderful place, thriving culturally, where you can actually engage with people. We need to make sure that all house owners understand the benefits for them of having clean homes and efficient homes. We have got EIB loans, that's the European Investment Bank, who is ready to give smallholder loans across most cities. We've got city mayors that are ready to change. But we do need the regulation. We need the signals coming from nation states. And so, as you leave this incredible space, please, please, please hold your leaders accountable. Please vote in the European elections and the next democratic elections which we are having. Because if we continue, we will have absolute instability, and we will also have growing populism. The fear-mongering is really growing, and yet there is hope. Last point. I am a grandchild of an Auschwitz survivor. I am the grandchild of the first French civil servant in the European Commission. I believe that we can build without having to build from war. Please don't let us get in a situation where we have to be in a third world war before we finally decide to lift ourselves from the bootstraps and actually do something. We need to do it now. We need to all embrace activism in a way which is pragmatic and logical, not as if it's the antithesis of a good life for all.
Amazing. What do I say? So I knew this was going to be amazing, and Sandrine, you haven't disappointed. You closed this session better than I can. Thank you all for staying with us. Amazing to see you. Enjoy your time. Sandrine, thank you.
Thank you.
It's fantastic.